Hello everyone, and welcome back to the Anime Octopus YouTube channel. Today, we delve into the intriguing topic of what if Naruko were a young prodigy? In part 4 of our fanfic series. Disclaimer: the content on this channel is purely for entertainment and discussion, and all rights and credits for the anime footage used belong to their respective creators and copyright holders. Now, let's begin our exploration. Naruto upheld her commitment to Gaara, meeting him promptly the following day just before noon. Finding him at his usual spot on the swing, accompanied by the teddy bear from the previous day, didn't surprise her. While some might find it amusing for someone his age to carry a teddy bear, she understood it as likely his sole companion besides Yashamaru. It evoked memories of her own fox, a once constant companion before her ninja days began. Their time together was limited to just a day, with the Chunin exams commencing the next day. Despite this, Naruto pledged to make the most of their time together, not out of pity but out of empathy. She recognized a shared solitude in Gaara, something she herself had felt before finding her current friends. Upon arriving at the Suna Academy with her team, Mikoto-sensei expressed relief at their timely arrival, jesting about Naruto's guidance from her new friend. Naruto blushed at the playful banter but clarified that Gaara was simply a friend who had helped her find the academy earlier that day. Their brief encounter at brunch and the subsequent introduction to her teammates went smoother than expected. However, Naruto couldn't ignore the curious glances directed at Gaara, reminiscent of the scrutiny she often faced back home. She refrained from delving into his past, respecting his privacy. Mikoto-sensei wished them luck as they entered the room for the written exam, each desk adorned with papers awaiting their attention. "Ah, this situation is challenging," she inwardly remarked as she came to terms with the impending examination. Despite her intellectual prowess and ninja skills, she struggled with written tests. The pressure of such exams seemed to stifle her abilities. "You'll excel," reassured Kasumi, offering support. Indeed," Koji concurred, acknowledging her capabilities. Gathering confidence from her friend's encouragement, she determinedly asserted, "I will pass this assessment without fail." Meanwhile, Matsunaga Kaido found himself reluctantly assigned as the proctor for the latter part of the Chunin exam. Typically preferring other engagements, such as missions or observing Genin teams vying for advancement, he now found himself overseeing this task. Due to Suna's unique climate compared to other nations, promotions during their exams were scarce. Surveying the remaining candidates, he expressed his disappointment. "Only 57, Yoshida?" he queried the previous exam's proctor, receiving a nonchalant shrug in response. "That's the count from the initial 90 participants," Yoshida confirmed, prompting Kaido to glance sternly at the Genin group. "Listen closely. The upcoming assessment will take place outside Suna. You have 1 hour to pack essential items in a single bag and meet me at the gates," he announced before vanishing using a sunshine technique, surprising those unfamiliar with the move and those not expecting the proctor's swift departure. Observing the bewildered Genin, Yoshida intervened, urging them to act promptly. "What are you waiting for?" he exclaimed. "Move!" Reacting swiftly, the Genin dispersed to prepare for the next phase of the examination. As they returned to their lodging, Koji initiated a discussion. "What's your strategy?" he inquired, directing his query to the group. Mizmaru barked affirmatively, and Kasumi, understanding the canine's cues as an Inuzuka, proposed a plan. "Let's divide our packing based on our strengths. I'll manage medical supplies, while Naru-chan and Koji can handle combat and strategic resources," she suggested. Agreeing with the division of roles, Naruto chimed in, "I can use storage scrolls to carry additional items. We won't need to go all out, but I'll prepare extra scrolls and tags just in case." With a clear plan in place, they returned to their accommodation to prepare for the upcoming challenges. Matsunaga Kaido, the overseer, observed the assembled candidates by the gates, each carrying bags discreetly. Alongside him stood 4 assistants, 3 of whom held bags, while the 4th remained passive. "Firstly, these are consent forms. Signing them is mandatory, withdrawal now results in disqualification," Kaido explained, passing the forms to his assistants for distribution. Why do we need waivers? Inquired a Jinan from the waterfall village. Kaido chuckled softly, handing over the forms with a smirk. For your protection, he stated plainly, eliciting varied reactions from the crowd. What does that mean? Several Jinan exclaimed in disbelief. Relax, Kaido interjected, dismissing their concerns. This examination is serious. The ninja path is often perilous, hesitation is not an option. These waivers acknowledge that Suna bears no responsibility for any casualties during this exam. So, we're supposed to fight each other? A Jinan from Suna questioned. It's inevitable. This phase is a battle royale, Kaido clarified. You'll be transported to Area 51, a unique terrain bordering Wind Country and its neighboring nation. Your objective, obtain 3 distinct coins, Wind, Heaven, and Earth, from our 3 assistants here, he gestured towards them. Return to Suna within 6 days with all 3 coins and a living team. Failure on either account results in disqualification. Can we form alliances? Asked another Jinan. Kaido shrugged, you may, but it's risky, especially if your alliance holds different coins. Remember, even allies can become adversaries in such situations. Now, collect your coins. Once done, you'll be blindfolded for transport, we can't reveal our route. All right, Kaido announced after a moment. Let's begin. This prompted the candidates to spring into action, eager to start their challenge. All right, what information do we have? Koji inquired, leaning against a nearby tree after their hour-long trek. Naruto retrieved a silver coin from her pouch and examined it, noting the wind symbol engraved on it. It's a wind coin, she remarked. Given the dense forest cover, we must be quite deep inside. Any ideas on our next move? Mizmaru barked beside Kasumi, who then spoke up, the closer we get to the exit of this arid area, the more sand we should encounter. Does anyone have a map? I do, Koji replied, producing it from his bag. However, this place, Area 51, might not be marked on it. Naruto nodded, stowing the coin back into her pouch. We should make an attempt. Suna is relatively central in Wind Country, and they mentioned it's only an hour or 2 away, she said with a sigh. The challenge lies in determining our initial direction. Kasumi chewed her lip in thought. Mizmaru might track a scent back to the village, ours or otherwise, but with numerous shinobi around, along with the wind, heat, and sand, it won't be straightforward. Mizmaru whimpered, indicating his agreement with her assessment. Koji sighed, shrugging slightly. Finding our way out is one challenge, but retrieving the other 2 coins. He trailed off, halting abruptly as they heard rustling nearby. Naruto's eyes widened, and she instinctively ducked as a kunai whizzed past, embedding itself into a nearby tree where her head had just been. You don't need to concern yourselves with that, a voice announced, as 3 Jinan emerged from hiding. We'll be taking your coin, Konoha Nin. The trio, adorned in darker attire with patches of camo in blue and white, all bore Kirigakure Hitai 8. Kasumi, Koji called out, and they all readied themselves for a confrontation. Stand by as backup with Mizmaru. Kasumi nodded, her gaze focused. Understood, she affirmed. Naru, what's your take? Koji inquired, turning to Naruto who had shifted into her typical Uzumaki clan stance. We fight fiercely, she declared, flashing a determined smile before assuming a serious expression. Pitiful, one of the Kiri Jinan sneered. Are you even 6, Blondie? Naruto's eyes narrowed, teeth gritting in annoyance. I'm almost 9, Tabane. She retorted sharply. Without further delay, she leapt back to create distance and hurled shuriken at the Kiri-nin, initiating the skirmish. Kaden, Gokaku no Jutsu, Fire Release, Great Fireball Technique. Koji invoked, though he wasn't surprised when the male Jinan he faced countered with a strong water jutsu. Humph, you'll need to do better than that, Uck. The Jinan grunted as he was struck from behind by Mizmaru. Meanwhile, Naruto confronted two Genin who had decided to double-team her, spurred by one of the male Kiri Genin's remarks about the pretty blonde. Naruto was good, and at first had the upper hand as she used her agility to block, dodge, duck, jump and anticipate her enemies' moves. But that got harder as they showed just how skilled they were at working together. "Never seen a girl with whiskers before," the male said, smirking. "Wonder if she's one of those bloodline freaks?" The female sneered, and used Naruto's moment of distraction to nail her in the gut and place her kunai against her neck harshly, drawing a line of blood. "Has to be, I mean look at her," the girl sneered, digging the kunai deeper against the blonde's neck. "No one has marks like that and is human." Naruto's widened eyes reflected her shock as blood trickled from the shallow wound, eliciting gasps as memories of derogatory remarks from villagers flooded back to her. "Let go of her," Kasumi interjected sternly, delivering a swift blow to the girl restraining Naruto while brandishing a kunai. The force compelled the girl to release Naruto, who cautiously stepped back. With a glare at the remaining Genin, she swiftly executed hand seals for the futon, repushu, wind release, gale palm, technique, sending a powerful gust that knocked one of the Genin into his comrade. "Give us your coin," Koji demanded as Kasumi subdued another opponent with ninja wire. "Or we'll demonstrate what we've honed over time. If you cooperate, your safety is assured." "You'll have to kill us," one Genin retorted defiantly, noting Koji's Sharingan eyes. "How about we avoid that scenario?" Kasumi intervened, swiftly binding the Genin with ninja wire as Naruto cheered in triumph, retrieving the coin. "We should proceed to locate the last coin," Naruto suggested, energized. Agreeing, the team prepared to depart, but their departure was interrupted by a hostile Genin wielding a hefty sword. Reacting swiftly, Koji and Naruto synchronized their jutsu, Katen, Ryuka no Jutsu, Fire Release, Dragonfire Technique, and Futon, Atsugai, Wind Release, Pressure Damage, creating a devastating whirlpool-like effect that surged towards the oncoming threat. The three ninjas found themselves trapped with no viable escape route, and Team 7 was fixated on the devastating impact of the incendiary projectiles. Brief cries were drowned out swiftly, leaving only the acrid stench that stung Kasumi and Naru's eyes. Koji battled to suppress the visceral reaction to the scene. Whether all three were deceased remained uncertain to Naruto, Koji, and Kasumi, but the aggressor who initiated the assault undoubtedly met their end. The odds of survival, particularly for Genin, were exceedingly low after such an onslaught. "It seems your recently developed technique, as you mentioned, carries significant risks," Kasumi remarked, suppressing her revulsion. The trio had encountered lethal situations before, inevitable in their roles as experienced Genin. Previous encounters involved engagements with bandits during C-rank missions, which often escalated to borderline B-rank challenges upon completion. "We should depart," Naruto asserted, masking her own turmoil. Perfecting the technique had consumed nearly 6 months of rigorous training for Naruto, with an additional half-year to seamlessly integrate it into a joint Katen technique with Koji. This combined attack, executed just now, represented one of Naruto's most potent wind jutsu, albeit a personal favorite. Acknowledging Naruto's decision, Koji assented, and the three Genin swiftly pivoted, sprinting toward a direction they hoped would lead them closer to their objective, the elusive third coin in the Suna Desert beyond. Naruto firmly advised, "I recommend that you surrender." Her demeanor was composed yet assertive, as she brandished one of her mother's katanas named Toyota Mahaim, with the inscription etched beneath the hilt and guard. The Genin was acutely aware that any sudden movement could result in the blade piercing her neck, showcasing Naruto's proficiency with the weapon despite her ongoing development in Kenjutsu. The revelation of Naruto's unique chakra nature, notably strong in wind and complemented by a secondary lightning affinity, defied the typical fire affinities prevalent in the land of fire. This unexpected discovery mirrored the surprise of Koji's fire affinity and Kasumi's water affinity, deviating from the usual earth or fire affinities associated with the Inuzuka clan. Understanding the situation's gravity, Kasumi intervened, confirming the Genin's lack of the required coin. Despite the Genin's offer of her own coin in surrender, Naruto maintained her stance, prompting Koji to locate the missing coins without causing offense. Naruto's observation of Koji's cautious demeanor amused her, although Kasumi's impatience was evident. Upon retrieving the coins, Naruto swiftly disengaged, incapacitating the Genin with a precise pressure point strike, showcasing her speed and strategic prowess. She then efficiently sealed her katana, designed with a green hilt and chakra conductive metal blade, into a compact scroll for concealment. This tactical decision highlighted Naruto's resourcefulness, ensuring she maintained an advantage during the examination. "We never said that," Naru muttered to the unconscious girl. It was best to leave them unconscious so as to not have them attack when they went to leave. They'd learned that the hard way with the Kiri team. They also didn't want to go around killing every team they met, and they'd met 3 or 4 in the 3 days they'd been there. "It must be the lack of ramen. Makes her cranky," Kasumi said, shaking her head. "HN." Koji nodded. "We should commence our departure now. Considering the terrain's sandy nature, I propose we proceed in that direction. The sun's position should aid us in determining our location and the route to Suna," Naruto suggested, her expression contemplative, a departure from her usual demeanor. Koji and Kasumi concurred, and the trio embarked on their journey back to the desert of Suna and its hidden village, with 3 days remaining. 2 days later, Team 7 arrived at the Suna gates, fatigued, parched, famished, and nursing injuries. Despite their condition, which was relatively mild compared to other teams, they managed to return. Naruto primarily experienced fatigue, with her injuries healing swiftly due to her Uzumaki heritage and Jinchuriki status. Kasumi tended to the more severe wounds, nearing exhaustion herself. "Ah, a team from Konoha," remarked the proctor upon their arrival at the gate. "You're the inaugural team from your village, a commendable achievement." "HN," grunted Koji, nursing his left arm, nearly fractured during an encounter with a team attempting to seize their coins. Naruto presented the 3 silver coins. "These are our tokens." The proctor, Kaido, accepted the coins and proceeded. "Excellent, you've retained your original coin." Perplexed, all 3 members of Team 7 raised an eyebrow. "What do you mean by that, Proctor-san?" inquired Kasumi. Kaido smirked knowingly. "Ah, there was an undisclosed aspect of the test. Teams failing to recover their original coin, imbued with their team's chakra signature, are disqualified." "What?" exclaimed all 3, Koji's shock evident, a departure from his usual composed demeanor. "Yes, it's to assess how seriously you Genin take this aspect of the exam. The coins symbolize a scroll, much like a ninja might be entrusted with carrying vital scrolls containing sensitive information between allied villages or during treaty negotiations. There are adversaries who would attempt to intercept or seize the scroll for espionage. Should such an event occur, the mission is compromised, and failure is declared if the scroll isn't recovered before being accessed." Team 7's expressions turned serious as they grasped the implication. "In essence, if we fail to safeguard the scroll, or in our case, the coin, until we reach the delivery point, then it's evident that we're not prepared for Chunin rank," Koji remarked. Kaido nodded, a faint smile on his face. "Exactly. Few realize the significance, which is why we refrained from explaining earlier." Naruto snorted, commenting, "Clearly, the exam isn't designed to be a walk in the park, otherwise, everyone would be Chunin material." "Indeed," Kaido affirmed. "It's time for you to proceed, seek medical assistance if necessary, or prepare for tomorrow's phase of the examination." They acknowledged and proceeded through the gates, accompanied by their Ninken, making their way to the hotel to unwind and recuperate from the recent challenges. Observing their departure, Kaido turned to a nearby Jonin. "Unless those 3 attain Chunin status, I'll be pleasantly surprised," he remarked, echoing the Jonin's thoughts on their potential based on their initial reactions. The Jonin with the coins chuckled beside him, prompting Kaido to notice that the blonde Genin had not acquired 3 coins but 4. "Well, I'll be impressed, they've managed to secure 4 coins instead of the requisite 3, he exclaimed, surprised by their resourcefulness. Gaara hesitated, contemplating the wisdom of visiting Naruto's residence upon learning of the girl's return to the village post-second exam. Articulating his recent emotional turmoil proved challenging, especially regarding the preceding day's events. Despite her lack of fear towards him and her past defense of him, a peculiar sensation stirred within him, occasionally causing discomfort in his abdomen. Conversations with Yashamaru during her stay at Area 51 revealed surprise at his emotional state, likening it to concern or worry for Naruto. Yet, the prospect of seeing her again did evoke a sense of contentment. His musings were interrupted by the opening of the front door, revealing a familiar tan blonde figure. Notably absent were her usual kimono blouse, obi, skirt, or ninja gear, replaced instead by a black tank top bearing an orange swirl, presumably her clan insignia, paired with orange shorts. Her unbound hair, devoid of its usual clip, lent a slightly disheveled yet lively appearance. "Ah, Gaara." Naru greeted with a smile. "It's great to see you." A faint smile graced Gaara's features, a gesture unfamiliar yet slowly becoming more natural. In his hands rested a brown paper bag containing medical creams procured with assistance from his uncle. Handing it to her, he breathed a sigh of relief when she blinked and accepted the provided bag. He had been concerned that she might decline, recalling a past incident where a similar gesture had been met with a closed door. "These are medical creams," Naruto observed as she peered into the bag, her expression shifting into a smile. "Thank you, Gaara. Koji, Kasumi, and I were just about to have dinner. Would you care to join us?" Gaara realized he had remained silent throughout the entire exchange and felt a slight flush of embarrassment. "If it's acceptable," he replied. Naruto chuckled, took his hand, and guided him inside. He was surprised by the warmth of her touch and the absence of his sand forming a barrier between them. Even days later, this continued to astonish him, as his sand typically prevented physical contact. It even occasionally deterred Yashamaru, although he couldn't fathom why the sand permitted him access at times while blocking him at others. Switching to a professional tone, the passage continues. In the end, only 8 teams successfully completed the second phase, leaving 24 Genin remaining. Congratulations on reaching this stage, Mikoto-sensei commended them as they gathered at the stadium adjacent to the academy. Her expression radiated pride, and Naruto, Koji, and Kasumi reciprocated with smiles, while Mizmaru greeted them with 2 barks. "I will be closely observing your progress. Best of luck to all 3 of you," she announced before joining the other Jonin sensei standing nearby, each overseeing their respective teams. The previous proctor presided over the proceedings, and Naruto spotted Gaara and Yashamaru not far away, with the latter presumably being the Kazekage. The Kazekage bore a striking resemblance to Gaara, with dark red hair that bordered on brown and eyes deeper in hue compared to Gaara's distinctive pale teal. Gaara's resemblance to him hinted at a familial connection, possibly as his father. Naruto exchanged a smile with Gaara, who appeared uneasy in the large gathering and under the scrutiny of so many spectators. She waved at him, catching his attention and eliciting a subtle lightening of his expression, wondering if anyone else had noticed. The Kazekage, however, did notice, his gaze shifting from her wave to Gaara, an unspoken acknowledgement passing between them. The ninja's demeanor reflected a high standard of professionalism as she observed a subtle expression shift, including a slight frown and a raised eyebrow during the interaction. The Kazekage engaged in a brief exchange with Yashamaru, eliciting a nod of acknowledgement from Gaara's uncle. She paid little attention to the specifics of their conversation, focusing instead on the official announcement that followed. "I extend my congratulations to those who have progressed to the final or semifinal stages of the examinations. However, as there are still numerous participants remaining, a preliminary bout will determine the advancing candidates. The rules governing the matches remain largely unchanged. Participants are bound by the waivers they have signed until the conclusion of the examinations, permitting lethal engagement. Nonetheless, excessive violence will factor into the evaluation conducted by the examiners," the Kazekage stated, gesturing towards Kaido, who stood nearby. "The proctor," he indicated Kaido, "retains the authority to intervene preemptively and declare a victor before lethal force is utilized. Any contestant who disregards this directive by continuing to fight lethally after being instructed to stand down will face disqualification. Matchups will be randomly assigned and displayed on the board above the cage's viewing platform. If there are no inquiries, we shall commence promptly, he concluded. The Kazekage's pragmatic approach was evident, leaving no room for ambiguity. The audience refrained from posing questions, understanding the clear expectations set for them. With a nod, the Kazekage turned his attention to Yashamaru and Gaara before ascending to the elevated platform, where dignitaries such as the Wind Daimyo and the Kazekage's Onbu guards were seated. Gaara, accompanied by two other individuals, took his place in the cage box, prompting a visible reaction from those nearby who appeared eager to keep their distance from him. Above the stadium, a balcony-like area accommodated the participating Jonin and their Jonin senseis, while the tiered seating below catered to spectators and civilians keen on witnessing the tournament unfold. The board on the cage box swiftly displayed the names of the first match contenders. "Good luck," Kasumi said, smiling over at the dark-haired boy. Naruto added, "Ditto. Kick his butt, Kokun." Koji's lips quirked up in a small smile smirk, and he forced back an eye twitch from the shortened version of his name Naruto had come up with over the years. She didn't use it often, but when she did he always had the urge to twitch. "Indeed," he responded calmly, commencing his descent towards the stadium accompanied by a young man with distinctive light blue hair, fair complexion, and striking pink eyes. An intriguing individual, to say the least. "He seems rather reserved lately, wouldn't you agree?" Kasumi remarked quietly, partly addressing herself. Naruto glanced downward, some of her unruly bangs veiling her face, pondering the reasons behind Koji's recent emotional shift. Koji had recently endured a profound loss with his brother's alleged suicide. Uncertain of the truth, Koji grappled with conflicting narratives. While some speculated that Itachi was responsible for his best friend's demise, both Naruto and Koji were reluctant to accept such claims. Naruto remained skeptical of either scenario. Her long-standing acquaintance with both Shisui and Itachi left her puzzled by the sudden change in Itachi's demeanor, yet she lacked concrete insights. If Mikoto-sensei possessed any knowledge, she remained tight-lipped about it. "Accepting death is always challenging," she murmured, her voice barely audible to Kasumi. "However, Koji possesses resilience. Given time, he will likely reclaim his former self." Kasumi nodded in understanding, having been affected by the loss of Koji's brother as well. His profound transformation had sparked concerns that he might never revert to his easygoing nature. The loss resonated deeply with Naruto too. At times, she overlooked her own attachment to the Uchiha clan, viewing them as her chosen family. They were her first meaningful connections, especially with Mikoto-sensei's household and Koji's family, despite her amiable rapport with the entire clan. "Let us hope for that," Kasumi murmured, and both girls turned their attention to the unfolding duel between their comrade and the opposing contestant. Koji maintained a composed demeanor as he observed his adversary, masking any underlying nerves. While confident in his own skills, he approached the situation with caution, uncertain of the Kumo Nin's techniques. Despite possessing only 2 Tomoe in his Sharingan after nearly 3 years, a fact that some Uchiha elders might find peculiar or even disgraceful, Koji remained undeterred. Noticing the distinct coloring of his opponent, Koji speculated that the boy might have a unique bloodline or genetic trait, although he acknowledged the existence of individuals with unconventional hair colors, such as Hatake Kakashi with his silver-white hair, the Haruno clan with their pink-haired members, and other notable examples like the Anko woman and an Onbu operative with purple hair. As the match commenced, Ryuichi's provocation was met with a measured response from Koji, who strategically initiated the first move to assess his opponent's capabilities. Recognizing the risk of underestimating the Kumo Nin's skills, Koji engaged in a series of attacks to gauge his taijutsu style, allowing Ryuichi an opportunity to transition to a defensive stance. Despite Ryuichi's commendation of Koji's abilities during the exchange, Koji subtly noted an unexpected increase in strength upon being struck, possibly indicating chakra enhancement akin to the renowned super strength exhibited by one of the legendary Sannin. Returning to the scene, Koji wore a sly grin, choosing not to respond to the other Genon's remark as he swiftly launched another attack. The blue-haired boy narrowly evaded Koji's fist by twisting aside at the final moment, countering with a kick aimed at Koji's seemingly exposed back. This tactic might have succeeded had it not been for Koji's familiarity with facing swifter and more agile opponents, particularly Naruto, whose refined fighting style surpassed that of the blue-haired boy. Additionally, after nearly 3 years as a Genon, Mikoto-sensei had imparted most of the basic techniques suitable for their rank during training sessions focused on physical prowess and teamwork. Amidst these teachings, there was one jutsu that had piqued their interest and received earnest requests for instruction, a technique Koji refrained from delving into at present due to its complexity. This jutsu was none other than Shunshine, a skill not uncommon among Genon but still not widely known. Thus, it was no surprise that the other boy experienced a moment of astonishment when his kick missed its mark, meeting only air and lingering leaves that hadn't yet dispersed. "He's getting serious," Naruto noticed as she and Kasumi watched the fight with rapt attention. Mizmaru barked in agreement, and Kasumi bit her lip. "He's getting really good with that Shunshine," she said, and Naruto chuckled. "Yeah, but being his brother, did you expect less?" Naruto asked, avoiding saying Shisui's name as it always brought a flash of lose and sadness to her heart when she did. Shisui had been known for his Shunshine, and Koji had been determined to be as good if not better than his brother when it came to the technique. It would be a while before he got there, but he was already one of the quickest with the jutsu. Her thoughts were only proven as Koji recovered from being punched in the gut and attacked Ryaochi again, only to use the Shunshine 3 times in quick succession to confuse and reach his target quickly. Koji's fist struck the blue-haired boy's cheek and sent him back skidding across the ground. "He's doing well, isn't he?" Mikoto-sensei said more than asked as she came up behind her 2 students. Burgundy and Blue Eyes looked up at her and smiled, nodding. "He is, but something is wrong. I mean, that hit should have affected Blue Boy more," Naruto said, frowning. "I know from experience that Koji had a mean punch when he's going all out." Kasumi frowned as did Mikoto. "Blue Boy?" Kasumi questioned and Naruto flushed, looking down in embarrassment. "I can't remember his name, Sumi." Ryaochi panted slightly as he stood, running the back of his hand over his right cheek and mouth, where a small line of blood could be seen. "You actually made me bleed," he said, smirking. "Though I doubt you could have done any of that without those eyes of yours." Koji's Sharingan eyes glared, and he scoffed. "Shows what you know. These eyes are just a tool, they're not the reason behind me being able to hit you." Koji clenched his right fist and winced at the pain that shot through and up his arm. It was almost as if he hit a brick wall. Ryaochi laughed. "Well, you won't be able to do that again. You're not the only one with a bloodline," he sneered. His pink eyes flared for a moment before light transparent blue scales seemed to appear sparsely on his skin. It was almost not noticeable, but his Sharingan made them clearer. Seeing as others had gasped in the stands, it was noticeable even to normal eyes, but he doubted it was as noticeable to them as it was to someone with the Sharingan or possibly the Byakugan. Tatsusukuruten, or simply Tatsusukuru, Dragon Scale Release or Dragon Scale, my bloodline. Koji stilled his own shock and confusion. Truth be told, he'd never heard of a bloodline like that before and was weary. Was it only a defensive bloodline, or did it have offensive properties? "I've never heard of a bloodline like that." Ryaochi smirked, and fell back into a stance, removing a oddly long kunai from his pouch. "I'm an orphan, and the first with this bloodline. I named it myself, it's not known yet, so I'm surprised you haven't heard of it," he said. "With this power, you have no chance, Uchiha." Koji removed a kunai from his own pouch and glared. He wouldn't lose, not even if the boy had an unknown bloodline. "Enough talk," Koji said coldly, and the two moved at the same time to attack each other. Sparks flew as the 2 kunais collided. "Is that even possible?" Kasumi asked, eyes wide. "A bloodline that's never been seen before?" Naruto was also as shocked as her friend but shrugged. "I can't see why not. I've read a bit about bloodlines, No one really knows how they began to start with. Though there is a supposed myth about how the Sharingan and Byakugan are offspring of the Rinnegan. Rinnegan? Kasumi questioned and Naruto shrugged. It's just a myth as far as the books are concerned. I'll give you the book I read about it in after the exams. Mikoto smiled slightly and interrupted her two students. New bloodlines are known to pop up every now and then. The Yamanaka's bloodline is the newest in Konoha, and seeing as the third generation has inherited it since the original person to have it, it's passable by blood, hence it being a bloodline. Wait, you mean the Yamanaka's mind jutsus are a bloodline? Naruto asked. I thought those were just jutsus they created. Family secrets. Mikoto shook her head. Many believe that at first, but anyone without the Yamanaka blood can't do them. The hand seal to activate it isn't even a normal seal. What happens if someone tries and isn't part of the clan? Kasumi asked, and regretted a moment later as Mikoto smirked. An Uchiha tried copying it once back when the bloodline was new. He died, she said. The shock to his body trying to safely move his mind and soul to another killed him. Well, his soul and mind anyways. He was a vegetable, brain dead. His body died soon after. Kasumi and Naruto both shivered and focused back on the match. Koji looked worn out and was panting as he jumped back. The scales that covered his opponent left little area he could strike to wound. Unfortunately, the blue-haired boy didn't have that problem, and Koji had a few shallow cuts that they could see. Katen, Goryuka no Jutsu, Fire Release, Great Dragon Fire Technique. Koji called, after going through the seals as fast as he could. It seemed Ryuichi wasn't expecting such a powerful fire attack, but then, neither was Naruto, Kasumi or Mikoto. He's finally managed to do it, Kasumi said in awe. His most powerful Katen jutsu. Naruto smiled widely as she watched the dragon-shaped fire jutsu head towards the blue-haired boy who tried to dodge only to not have time. Instead, the boy's hunched down, his arms crossed in front of him, his eyes seemed closed. As Koji moved quickly towards the boy who was trying to fend off the high-temperature flames with his own bloodline, or so it seemed, Naruto noticed his eyes. They were Sharingan red as expected, but instead of 2 tomoes, there were 3 in each eye. He did it! Naruto gasped. His Sharingan, it's matured. Mikoto smiled widely for once, having seen that development as well. Kasumi grinned, and pumped her fist into the air. Go Koji! She cheered. Koji eye narrowed, though he had a faint smile as he heard Kasumi's cheer for him, and he seeing the fire fade, he used the sunshine in quick succession. Or as quick as he could with the chakra he had left, that one fire jutsu having taken a little under half of what he had left. Not to mention he was using the Sharingan and it needed chakra to stay active. Appearing behind him, Koji noticed what he'd suspected before to be true. While the back of his neck was covered in defensive scales, much like most parts of his body, there were areas not protected. He'd been sure he'd seen an important area not protected during their fight. To anyone else it might not seem important, but having fought against Naruto for so long, you pick up a thing or two about anatomy and pressure points. Seeing Ryuichi about to turn, he acted as fast as he could and hit the pressure points with 2 fingers, and the boy's eyes widened and he fell face first onto the arena floor, his bloodline receding as he lost consciousness. Koji sighed, and backed away, allowing his Sharingan to fade back to dark gray eyes. Power from a bloodline or otherwise, it doesn't mean a thing without skill, he said, even though the unconscious boy could not hear him. Winner, Uchiha Koji. Kasumi and Naruto both clapped along with many others of the crowd and met Koji on his way back to the competitors' area. Great fight, Kokun, Naruto said as she hugged the lazy clam boy along with Kasumi. Mikoto chuckled at the picture it made, both girls having latched onto either of his sides to hug him, and Koji's eyes wide and a slight blush appearing on his cheeks. Lucky bastard, a Genin whispered. Being hugged by 2 hot girls, and his teammates at that. Mikoto rolled her eyes at the maturity of some of the other Genin from other teams, and Naruto and Kasumi had finally pulled back with smiles. Thanks, Koji muttered, stuffing his hands into his pockets. By the way, Naru-chan, Thanks for that last move. I don't think I would have won without it. Huh? Kasumi asked, blinking. Naruto laughed. Don't mention it, she said, knowing what he meant having seen him using one of her moves to knock the boy out. That last move, I used pressure points to knock him out. I got lucky it was one of the few areas not protected by his scales. I figure there was other areas but I couldn't last much longer. That Katen really drained me of chakra. Mikoto smiled. I could see that, you did great out there Koji. You've come far with your Katen jutsus. It's not often a Genin can control a B-ranked jutsu. Team Mikoto turned back towards the arena as the board displayed who would fight next. Haruka of Suna vs E2 Kenshin of Konoha. Haruka was a girl in the standard Suna wear, though of course with her own personal flair. Her long brown hair was coming out of a black head cap made to make the burning sun not as hot and stop heatstroke. Her skin was a light tan and she looked about 12 or 13. E2 Kenshin was someone they had seen around Konoha, and had graduated with. His teammates being Aburame Hoshi and Yamanaka Jin. He had black hair which was held in a small rat tail, ponytail that wasn't more than 4 or so inches long, pale skin, and large stormy gray eyes. On his back was a black-handled ninjato. Usually Anbu were seen with these type of swords, but sometimes, especially in Kenjutsu-type clans or families, you saw them on other ninja as well. Naruto herself, who was growing every day with Kenjutsu, only knew the bare basics when it came to other weapons, like the ninjato. Her knowledge was focused mostly on katana, seeing as it was the sword of choice of the Uzumaki and her mother. E2 Kenshin, I've never heard of that clan name before, Kasumi muttered as the fight began between the Konoha and Suna ninjas. That's because he isn't from a clan, Koji said. Not like his teammates. His uncle was from the Gecko clan, which is not very large and isn't one of the main clans of Konoha. But they're known for their Kenjutsu. The only Gecko left though is a Chunin RGHT now, I think. Shisui knew him since they were in the academy together. He might be a Jonin by now though. Koji shrugged and continued. E2 Kenshin's parents are civilians though. His mother is Gecko's sister, who was never a ninja because she had a disease that made her bones too fragile to go into battle with. His father is simply a merchant from what I know. Mikoto nodded. As far as I know, that's right, Koji. Kenshin has been a Genin as long as you three have, along with his team. They went to the one in Iwa, but failed to pass the second phase of the exam. He's said to be the next Kenjutsu master of Konoha, and with the help of his uncle I don't doubt it, she said. Naruto watched as the boy below attacked, but it seemed while the boy had skill with his sword, he lacked the speed and hand-eye coordination truly needed to utilize them. It was a problem she herself was still getting past, but was having trouble accomplishing. She had the speed, but she had to work more on her reaction time, and she didn't have a bloodline like the Sharingan to help with that problem yet. Haruka seemed to be built for speed, and though Naruto hated to admit it, she was faster than even her. The way she moved was fluid, like sand or wind, and Naruto had little doubt the girl was a wind affinity, which was common among Suna. It was proven when the girl began throwing wind jutsus at Kenshin. Naruto sighed. He'll lose, she said. He's good, but his opponent is a wind affinity, and she seems to know what she's doing. Kasumi nodded and added, from experience I know someone who relies on a weapon to beat a wind attack is doomed. Naruto's ended spars that way before with her Daitapa. Mikoto smiled at her team proud. Not always, Mikoto said, drawing their attention. In this case, he is if he doesn't have any jutsu to defeat her wind, but there are ways for a Kenjutsu master to defeat wind attacks. Speed, being one way, and I'm sure you three could think of other ways given time and the situation. Winner, Haruka. Turning back their attentions, they saw that Kenshin had lost his ninjato, probably to a wind attack, and Haruka was above him with a kunai at his throat and one at his heart. The matches continued. Yashiro of Kiri vs Hibiki of Kiri. The match ended in a tie, both having knocked each other out. Not surprising seeing as they'd not been going at it as seriously since they seemed to be teammates. Megumi of Kumo vs Aburame Hoshi of Konoha. The battle was seriously one-sided. Hoshi, a girl with shades, pale skin concealed by black high-collar trench coat and long black hair pulled up into two high ponytails, used her kikashu to drain Megumi of her chakra after a short taijutsu battle. Something the Aburame showed promise in, which wasn't surprising seeing as the Aburame were hardly ever seen using many ninjutsu techniques. Mostly they used taijutsu, kenjutsu in their bugs. Needless to say, Aburame Hoshi won. "Looks like it's your turn, Naru-chan," Kasumi said, and Naruto looked at the screen and nodded. Uzumaki Naruto vs Kyo of Iwa. Uzumaki Naruto vs Kyo of Iwa. Kyo, her opponent, was a boy a few years older than her, probably around 14. This unfortunately made him much taller and obviously bigger than her. In a way this gave her an advantage, as they said, the bigger you were the harder you fall. He had muscles that spoke of his training, and was dressed in black and dark green. His Iwahita ate on his left thigh. His hair was dark blue, almost black and spiky as it reached his mid-back and was held by a hair band into a low ponytail. His eyes were sharp, cold, and purple, dark purple. Currently he was looking at his opponent as she stood in front of him, feet away. He would admit to being surprised at how young she looked, clearly the youngest in the exam, yet she didn't look or hold herself like a little girl. If he were less in a legend he'd have goaded her, trying to intimidate her with taunt about her age and running home to cry to her mommy. But he wasn't, and he was relatively good at reading people. There was one other thing that stuck out to him instantly. Her Konoha headband under her long sunset blonde hair, only a shade off from the sunshine locks of the man who'd nearly killed half the ninja of Iwa in the Third Shinobi War, and the same cerulean blue eyes. Even her features looked of him, but were also more feminine and round. The eye shape was also off. The Yondaime Hokage was a man Iwa held a grudge against, though it was slowly ebbing away as the years went on. But it would never truly fade. His own family had nearly been massacred because of that man, Konoha's Yellow Flash. "Namikaze," Kyo sneered, his eyes narrowed and he saw the blonde girl stiffen up. It was all the confirmation he needed. To avenge his clan he'd kill the Kyo Senko's daughter. Gaara watched from the cage booth as Naruto's match was called. He wasn't blind to the sudden look of loathing the boy gave the younger blonde. The name he spat at her, and the way she stiffened was enough for him to think it meant something to her. But what? Her last name was Uzumaki, not Namikaze. His father's face changed as the name was mentioned and once again his father seemed to stare intently at his blonde friend. He didn't really like the strange look his father gave Naruto, as if he was trying to dissect her with his eyes. Though he could be misreading it, he was no good with emotions himself, much less reading in others. "Namikaze," his father muttered. "So he did have a daughter, it makes sense now." "You mean the Yondaime Hokage?" "But he died nearly 9 years ago," the Wind Daimyo said. The Kazekage smirked. "She looks about Gaara's age, that means she must have been born around the time he died. He was married, if I recall, to an Uzumaki," he argued. Everyone currently present had looks of awe as they stared at the girl below. "My God, she does look like him," the daimyo muttered as Yashamaru placed the bingo book, an older version with the entry for Namikaze Minato in front of him. The two were obviously related, even Gaara who had caught a look at the book entry could see that. Turning back to the match, Gaara watched with almost emotionless gaze. "I'm going to enjoy this fight, Namikaze," Kyo spat, falling into a stance. Naruto narrowed her eyes and fell into her more commonly used Raiko Kitsune style. "I don't know why you Iwa nin keep bringing my father up, but if you haven't noticed my name is Uzumaki Naruto, not Namikaze. I was given my mother's name, and I plan to honor that," she sneered. Kyo scoffed. "Makes no difference to me," he said. "Enough talk, just fight," Naruto ordered. And like that, the fight began. It was rare that you got strength and speed in the same package, but Kyo was unfortunately one of those few who did. Naruto learned this the hard way within the first few minutes. While their speed was about equal, Naruto herself being just barely faster than the boy, Kyo was much stronger and with his longer limbs had farther reach than her. Og! Naruto groaned as she collided with the arena ground, and skidded across it in a tumbling mess of limbs. The last punch had really connected, and the pain from her torso led her to believe it would leave a nasty bruise. Her vision corrected as she blinked only to gasp, and roll to the side to avoid the Iwa Nin's foot which had been aimed at her neck. It occurred to her once more this boy was truly trying to kill her. This wasn't about becoming Chunin for him, this was about vengeance. Jumping to her feet, Naruto began to take the defense from the dark boy's attacks, and his taijutsu she would admit was better than hers in many ways. It was only through her agility, flexibility, speed and luck she was able to avoid them so well. He was so quick she was unable to find an opening to even think of striking any of his pressure points and had slowly fallen into a mix of her family styles. Flowing and weaving, spinning and jumping like some sort of twisted ballet dance. "You can't dodge forever," Kyo snarled. She barely saw it coming as his leg connected with her left arm, slowing her down enough that his knee was able to slam into her gut, and then almost too fast for her to see in her daze, slam into her face. Her head snapped back and she flew back to hit the ground once more. This was not going well, she had underestimated the guy's will and skill. If she didn't get it together soon she would lose. Then there was the fact of experience, he undoubtedly had years of training and experience more than she did. "Naruto! Don't give up, you can do this!" She heard Kasumi yell, and she looked over to where her teammates were standing on the competitor's balcony. Woof! She heard Mijmaru bark and in this case, she took that as to mean kick his ass. Though she had no idea if that was what the Ninken meant or not. Only Kasumi could tell, and from her laugh she figured she was close. Mikoto-sensei stood behind them, leaning against a wall, and even from where she was getting back to her feet she could see the woman was concerned for her. Koji looked like he was about to charge down into the arena himself, and Kasumi was of course trying to reassure her, but Naruto could see the worry on her and Mijmaru despite their earlier proclamations. "You're not what I expected," Kyo snarked, smirking as he fell back into a stance, a kunai in hand. "I expected more from a Hokage's daughter. A murders." Naruto's blue eyes narrowed as she hissed, falling into one of the stances for her blended taijutsu style, the Reiju Kitsune. Lowering her left hand to her hip pouch she pulled out a scroll and was quick to unseal it, releasing a beautiful katana. It had a blood red and ivory hilt with a black ribbon. The blade was much darker than a normal blade, almost black in color with gold kanji for Hitakiri on it, and a small area of the blade was serrated. Overall it was a very elegant yet unique katana. "My father was a hero, a ninja," she spat, her grip tightening on her katana, which was pointed at such an angle that it was partially towards the ground and behind her at the same time. The stance itself was not perfect, there were weak points to it, but for someone just learning all there was about kenjutsu and blending it with a still-in-progress taijutsu style, it was very well pulled off. Kyo snorted. "You're a fool," he said. "Your father was the worst of the worst. Nearly my whole clan was killed off by him. I am now the last, with my father having died on a mission as I grew up, and my mother too frail and depressed to do much. Now I shall avenge them, by killing you." "That is the stupidest thing I've ever heard," she said, glaring. "We're ninja, that was a war. Were you expecting him to lay down and die?" With a growl Kyo sprang forward, restarting the fight. Hitakiri flashed through the air as she met him halfway and sparks flew when the kunai and katana met. It was rather impressive that he could keep the larger blade back with just a kunai. "He's strong," Koji said, seemingly calm, but underneath those that knew him could tell he was angry and concerned. The fight had been going on for over 5 minutes now, and for the first few he'd been forced to watch as Naruto struggled to keep from being hit by her opponent. Though she was able to evade most of it, a fair few hits had struck her, all of which had not looked pleasant. It hadn't come as a surprise when she'd pulled out Hitakiri, though it did concern them all some. Hitakiri was a katana named and forged for the purpose of going in for the kill, or to severely wound. At least, that was how the history of the blade went. It had been one of the 7 blades of the Uzumaki clan, blades with a similar reputation of the seven swordsmen of the mist. Toyota Mahaim and Hitakiri were the ones most well known, and the only two that had disappeared with Konoha's red hot-blooded habanero or red chain death, aka no Rensashi, as she was listed in the bingo books. Shikigami, Kajitsune, Amatsu Kitsun, Shikio, and Tenkan. The other 5 swords of the Uzumaki clan, created at unknown times by unknown weaponsmiths. Few things were known, all were unique, said to be unbreakable, and made from chakra metal. Toyota Mahaim and Hitakiri were made for the main family's heir, while the others were gifts to the most gifted of Kenjutsu users in the Uzumaki clan. Koji himself only knew this because Naruto knew, and it wasn't exactly some big clan secret either. It was in any book about the Uzumaki clan, though there were not many in Konoha or in existence any longer. The remaining blades had disappeared when Uzushio was destroyed. The point was, if she was using Hitakiri, the man-slayer, then she was serious. "It'll be a tough fight for her," Mikoto-sensei said, wincing as she watched her youngest student in the Iwa Nin fight below. Kyo had just finished breaking through Naruto's defense and blood had sprayed out of the rather deep-looking wound he'd given her on her left forearm. Naruto seemed to hiss and kick towards the boy's knees only for him to jump over the graceful arc of her leg. In a show of skill and agility, Naruto spun around just as Kyo was. Hitakiri flashed through the air, and a spray of blood was seen as Naruto moved with Perseus' speed to a few feet away from where Kyo had landed. A few seconds later, Kyo sank to one knee, holding his stomach. Standing slowly and turning, everyone could see the cut through his clothes and the deep gash she'd inflicted on him, from his left side up his torso to just under the area of his heart. Blood dripped slowly from Hitakiri's blade as she turned back around to face Kyo. Hitakiri flicked out to her right side, the blood flicking off and falling onto the ground in an almost morbid grace. "She's getting better every day with her swords," Kasumi said, smiling. Mikoto chuckled. "She takes after her mother," she said. "Both of her parents, really." "Mikoto-sensei," Kasumi began, biting her lip. "Naruto, everyone will know now about her father, won't they?" Mikoto-sensei sighed. "It's unfortunately not avoidable at this point. It's sure to be spread around the countries that the Yondaime's legacy lives," she said. "Naruto will just have to claim her inheritance publicly sooner than she might have otherwise. If she takes the Namikaze name is up to her, but even if she keeps her mother's name, she's still the last heir to the clan." Naruto breathed deeply as she stood, staring at her opponent. "You're better than I thought," Kyo said, his teeth grinding together in anger and pain. "I wouldn't expect anything less from his daughter." Naruto rolled her eyes. She was getting so tired of everyone bringing up her father, especially the Iwa ninjas. "Anyone ever tell you that you talk too much?" she asked, and began running at Kyo, Hitakiri in a stabbing position for the moment, but it looked as if she would only need a moment to rearrange its position if she desired. Doten, Dochu Uaigyo, Earth Release, Underground Fish Projection. Naruto's eyes widened as Kyo sunk underground and she slowed down to a near stop before she heard faint yells from Koji and Kasumi. It took her a moment too long before she caught him reappearing behind her, kunai already descending to plunge into her back or chest, depending if she turned in time or not. The kunai was coming at her in such a way Hitakiri could not be used to counter it, at least not with the skill level she had with it. With a burst of speed and a flick of her wrist, she sent Hitakiri into the air above them as she let the kunai sink into her right arm so far it nearly came out the other side of it. She grunted in a loud sound of pain and jumped back, ripping the kunai out as she did. It wasn't exactly her best idea, as blood splattered around her and on her from the action. Hitakiri began spinning in the air as it descended, and with a glare she began quick hand seals, despite her wounds. Futon, Daitapa, Wind Release, Great Breakthrough. The winds headed at Kyo, who made a seal and gathered chakra into his feet, obviously trying to keep him grounded. It seemed to be working, and she figured it was because the boy probably had a earth affinity. She'd never seen anyone use the underground fish projection so easily and quickly before, unless they had one. Hitakiri flashed as it was caught and shot towards the boy, who had seen the glint of the near black blade as the wind caught it and propelled it with such a quickness he could not move, not that he could without undoing his chakra and unsticking himself. And the winds hadn't quite died down enough to chance that. Going through hand seals once more, her wounds already beginning to heal, she gathered a fair amount of chakra and used one of the very first jutsus she had worked about a year to create and perfect. It had been started by her mother, but her mother didn't have a lightning affinity, so it had been very hard for her to attempt to finish. It was easier for Naruto, since her second affinity was lightning, even if it was a lesser affinity to her wind element. Just as Hitakiri sank into Kyo's right shoulder with a sickening thud and spray of blood, she launched her technique. Raiten, Raiko Kitsune's, lightning release, lightning foxes. 3 foxes, of medium size appeared and with a roaring lightning sound, almost like thunder, they took off at lightning speeds, seeming like flashes of blue-white chakra in the shape of a fox. 2 attacked Kyo's legs, biting in, and the other latched itself to the boy's chest. The lightning lit up Hitakiri and there was a sound almost like lightning striking something, but not very loudly. When the small light show obscuring the view of Kyo disappeared, the Iwa Nin was on his knees, breathing heavily, his eyes unfocused. I never did anything to Iwa. I had nothing to do with the Third Shinobi War, I hadn't even been born, she said, breathing slightly heavy as she reached for another scroll from her pouch and unsealed Toyota Maheim. Spinning it in her right hand once, she smirked. I won't say I'm sorry, it was a war, and we are ninja. We have to be prepared to die for our villages, she said, and broke into a fast jog. Kyo grunted when the girl's foot slammed into his chest, sending him onto his back. He couldn't withhold a scream as she grabbed Hitakiri sticking from his left shoulder and pulled it out as he was forced onto his back. Staring up, he was faced with cold blue eyes which made him want to shiver. They were much too old and passive for a girl no older than 9. Hitakiri, slicked with his blood, was at his heart, and the other blade, which he'd seen the name Toyota Maheim on the blade itself as she'd been approaching, was lower, at his groin, to his embarrassment and fear. I suggest you forfeit, she said, unless you don't want to continue your clan in the future. Gulping, he nodded shortly. Even if he took the chance, he was never one to have a lot of chakra, his reserves were actually rather small for his age and gender. What he lacked there he made up for in taijutsu and chakra control. There was also the fact he'd been injured, and had lost a lot of blood and was still losing blood. I forfeit, he said, and the blonde removed her blades and stepped back. Winner, Uzumaki Naruto. The proctor called, and then added as if as an afterthought. Oh, and get a medic. Cheering broke out. Gaara was wide-eyed, rather unusual for a boy who rarely showed any form of emotion such as shock, as he watched Naruto's fight end. He had known she must be good if she was already a Junon at nearly 9 years old. He himself was trained as a ninja, though not exactly in the academy in Suna. His father took care of his training, and it wasn't always very pleasant. He supposed no one trusted him enough to attend the academy. But he would be the first to admit, without his sand, he probably wouldn't last much longer than 10 minutes, if that, against her. But then, he was 9, in a few years he'd have a better chance. Blood. Blood. I like this human. Gaara winced as his mother roared in his head. It wasn't often the Tanuki roared like that, unless blood was involved, and it was never exactly like this. It wasn't roaring for Naruto's blood, it was approving of her methods of fighting the other ninja. A part of him worried over that, the other part, a much larger part, was struck by curiosity. She is powerful, his father said, nodding in an approving yet appraising manner. Yes, Yashamaru agreed. I wasn't expecting her to win, honestly. Despite being the Yondaime Hokage's daughter, she is still only 8, going on 9. The Kazekage turned, slightly startled, and raised an eyebrow. So she is around Gaara's age then. I wonder? He muttered. Yashamaru was not the only one to wonder what the Kazekage had stumbled upon, or was thinking about. Pardon my curiosity, Kazekage-sama, the Wind Daimyo began, rather politely for a ruler of a country, but what is it you wonder? I assume it's about the girl, Uzumaki Heim, isn't it? Oh nothing, Kazekage replied. I just pondering on how powerful she'd become one day. That Raiten jutsu she used, it must be one of her own creations, as surprising as it is that someone her age could create a jutsu at all, as I've never seen or heard of it before. That was not a complete lie. He had been very impressed by the girl's battle, and if she made past her next fight into the finals then he was seriously contemplating her promotion, along with her teammate, the Uchiha boy. He was rather interested in seeing how their last teammate fared. But, what he had been contemplating was the coincidence of how the girl's father died. It was said the Yondaime Hokage died killing the Kyubi no Kitsune. Many may believe this, but the Kages, or he at least, was not stupid enough to believe it was possible to kill a Bijou. If it were, Shukaku would not have been imprisoned to begin with and simply killed. He found it curious that she was the almost 9, the same amount of years since the Kyubi attack and her father's death. He also knew Namikaze was a seal's master, and his wife was as good as him in Fu and Jutsu if not better. Is it possible Konoha made a Jinchuriki as well? He thought to himself as he watched the girl as she stood with her teammates. I suppose we won't know unless she shows some form of demonic chakra. If so though, is she going to be a problem with Gaara? He seems to be growing fond of her, which is worrying in itself. The Kazekage dismissed his thoughts. He would leave it alone. She wouldn't be staying in Suna for long and she might not ever see his youngest son again. If she did, well, she was powerful, and he doubted she was treated too terribly different from Gaara by Konoha. If nothing else she may end up helping his son. You did great out there, Naru-chan, Mikoto-sensei said, after Kasumi had finished helping her injuries finish healing. Most were already healed, perks of being a Jinchuriki, but Kasumi had insisted on healing her, to quicken the process. But Naruto, being the youngest, was used to Kasumi being a bit protective like that. Ever since their first C rank. Well, the dynamic of Team 7 was one of the best Mikoto had seen. Usually, she thought glumly to herself, that was how all Team 7s began. It had been nearly 3 years though, she was confident they would defeat the curse of Team 7. Though they might not completely defeat the curse of the love triangle or hexagon, despite being from such a prestigious clan as the Uchiha, Mikoto would admit she wasn't too good with math, and placing a name with a shape correctly had always annoyed her to no end. She digressed though. The point was she knew of Kasumi's romantic interest in Koji, had for 2 years now. She also knew Koji had begun developing feelings for Kasumi, but was conflicted because of standing feelings for Naruto that were still confusing him. She also knew Naruto had a similar problem, though she claimed it was platonic. Mikoto wasn't really sure, at times it seemed to be platonic. On both of their parts. But on other times, well, it was the most confusing situation she'd ever seen. She wasn't sure Naruto was even old enough or had been introduced to the concept of crushes or love in the right way to understand the difference between platonic love and romantic love. Thanks, Naruto said cheerfully, looking up from where she'd been looking disdainfully at the blood on her clothes and body. For a minute I really thought you were going to make Kyo less male, Kasumi snickered and Koji couldn't withhold a slight shiver. Being male, he could definitely sympathize for the Iwa Nin, at least a little. The boy had tried to kill Naruto. I'm not that mean, Dadabane, Naruto said, smirking in slight amusement. Hey, the fights are continuing, Koji said, suddenly, and they all turned to watch as the next pair was called. Kasumi grumbled. Damn, she said, I wanted to fight. Mikoto-sensei chuckled. Your turn will come, Kasumi, she placated, and they turned to watch the fight. The next fight was between Yoko of Iwa, which caused Naruto to roll her eyes. She'd seriously had enough of Iwa Nins to last her a lifetime, and Yamanaka Jin. It was a fight to see, and it only made Team Mikoto realize why Team 2 had been the only other team to pass the true Jinan exam given by the Jonin senseis of their graduation class. Yoko was good, just as good as Kyo, who they had seen the black-haired girl hovering over in concern, and figured that she must be a close friend or teammate. Yoko was good with a blade, better than Naruto, though given how long the Yoko had been training with Kenjutsu compared to Naruto, who had just recently, in the last 9 months, gotten into it might not say all that much in a few years. Jin on the other hand was good with ninjutsu it seemed, and what he lacked in taijutsu and strength he made up for in pure speed. He wasn't as fast Kyo, but he was faster than Naruto, but she blamed that on longer limbs the boys had and probably having more training and experience. It was also easy to tell he was a strategist, and trying to back Yoko into a corner, so to say, in order to use his clan's techniques to basically posse's Yoko. Unfortunately, before he could, nearly 15 minutes into the fight, not as long as Kyo and Naruto's battle but close, Yoko had knocked him out with the butt of her sword after activating a genjutsu. Apparently the girl wasn't only adept in kenjutsu. "Iwa sure is strong ninja," Naruto said, looking rather starry-eyed at the way Yoko had wielded her wakizashi. Mikoto nodded. "They always have really." She sighed, sweeping her bangs out of her face, her hair having been placed in a high ponytail. "It's the reason we took so long to end the Third Shinobi War. If not for the Yondaime and his Hiraishin, we probably wouldn't have for another half-decade, if we survived." The three Genin looked at their sensei in shock and awe. They had known the Third War had been a large event, especially seeing as their most closely allied village had been attacked and destroyed, Uzushio, but they hadn't realized just how big. But they hadn't even been born then, so no one could truly blame them. Those who hadn't lived through war never truly realized how much of an effect it had on those who had. "Kasumi-chan," Koji suddenly said, drawing all their attention. "You're up." Looking up towards the electric board they realized he was right. Inuzuka Kasumi versus Daichi of Suna. "A dog?" the Suna ninja asked credulously. "Is that even allowed?" Kasumi bared her fang-like canines at the boy before her. He had short dark green hair and nearly the same shade of dark green eyes. The boy's dark coloring, yet rather pale skin, was only enhanced by the black and dark green of his clothes. "Mijmaru is my Ninken partner," she growled out, falling into a basic, yet feral, looking stance. Daichi followed her example, smirking. "Let's see what you can do, Red," he said, tauntingly. Kasumi twitched momentarily, and thought about pointing out that her hair wasn't truly red, but a deep dark crimson. Many mistook her hair for a strange wine brown at first glance, so it wasn't exactly foreign to her, yet it was a pet peeve of hers. Her hair was crimson, damn it. Kasumi came out of her thoughts in order to dodge a fist that would have caught her under the chin, ducking under and twirling behind the green-haired boy. Almost as soon as she was facing his back she surged forward with a haymaker, a standard move of Naruto's the blonde had helped her perfect. It seemed the boy, around her age, was skilled in taijutsu, which didn't surprise her much. The boy had that sort of build about him, and his hands were rather bandaged for someone making a fashion statement. It made her wonder if all ninja were proficient in taijutsu to some extent. She knew in Konoha it wasn't the most common specialty of the shinobi. The fight intensified and Kasumi was forced to block a series of punches and open palm strikes, while trying to return them with strikes and kicks of her own. Unfortunately, she wasn't a taijutsu type, her skill lied in her clan jutsu, a few ninjutsu, and medical jutsu. Her specialties were of course medic-based and her clan-owned taijutsu skills, which were not quite like other taijutsu styles being a more feral style and usually needed the use of their Ninken partner. Thinking of Mijmaru, Kasumi was happy to see the dog coming at Daichi from the side. In mid-jump Daichi blocked one of her punches to his chest and jumped back just in time to avoid being plowed down by Mijmaru. The dog was no longer as small as when they'd first become Genin, and stood nearly to hip height on her, and she was about nearly 5 feet 1 inch. Daichi sneered. "Dumb mutt," he spat, and Mijmaru lowered his head and body to the ground as she growled and snarled at their opponent. "Faye, don't call my dog a mutt," she said, gritting her teeth before calming down. One common trait among the Inuzuka was their temper. And though only her father was an Inuzuka she'd taken mostly after her clan. The quick temper was one of those traits. Over the years Mikoto-sensei had tried to impose the importance of having a clear mind in a fight, especially one that was life or death. Anger could cloud one's judgment and it only took one mistake to lose your life. Futon, Kaze no Yaiba, Blade of Wind. Daichi exclaimed, and Kasumi cursed, looked to Mizmaru and both ran to one side with every ounce of speed they could. Kasumi groaned as she felt some of the fierce wind blades cut into her clothes and graze her skin. Looking at Mizmaru, she smirked and began her own counter technique, quickly storing away the fact her opponent had as much skill with wind jutsu as Naruto it seemed. She was lucky he hadn't been closer to her when he'd done the technique, or she might have been cut even worse and unable to avoid any of it. A direct hit might have even killed her. Jujin Bunshine, Beast Human Clone. Kasumi called. This drew Daichi's attention, and as soon as it was finished she called out her next technique. Gatsuga, Fang Passing Fang. I can't believe it, Naruto muttered, eyes wide. Everyone stared down at the battle below, and were shocked to see Daichi get up from the Inuzuka attack. Usually that was enough to take out someone of Jinan or low Chunin level, especially one who didn't know what to expect from an Inuzuka. They were a powerful clan, and one of the main clans of Konoha for a reason after all. He's good with his affinity, Mikoto-sensei said, her eyes concentrating on the fight below. Kasumi and Daichi were once again going at it with taijutsu, throwing jutsu out every now and then. Mostly a kawarimi, or shunshine, even a regular bunshine on Daichi's part. It was a show of skill in lower-ranked ninjutsu, and as seen before, Daichi seemed to have some powerful ranked wind jutsus in his arsenal. She can end this at any time if she can get close enough, Koji said, after analyzing the class of a wind jutsu against Kasumi's earth jutsu. Naruto looked at him in confusion before her eyes lit up and she smiled. Right, her medical jutsu, she said, remembering all the times Kasumi had beaten her in some spars using the skills. Even with her almost inhuman healing rate, Naruto could still be beaten, as it took a few minutes for some wounds. Especially internal ones, like cut tendons or hit to her nervous system. Mikoto smirked as she saw Kasumi readying a technique, one of her most used medical techniques, as Mizmaru latched onto Daichi in an attempt to keep him still for a few moments. Looks like she's ready to end it as well, she said, and they watched as their teammate shot forward with glowing hands. A Chakura no Mesu, chakra scalpel. Daichi was able to finally shake Mizmaru, but not before he was hit in certain spots, cutting certain tendons in his ankle and arms that shut down his use of them until healed. He fell onto his knees as Kasumi jumped back away from him, in case he tried anything, not that it was likely he could without complete use of his limbs. Daichi growled and sighed. Daichi is unable to fight, winner, Inuzuka Kasumi. Mikoto smiled, happy to see her last student pass into the next round. She was glad to see she was right about them being ready for this exam, and a possible promotion. She'd already seen enough to consider them ready to be Chunin. She'd been hesitant a year ago, or before that, because Naruto was still so young. She was around the same age as Itachi had been when he'd become a Chunin, actually a little younger, as Itachi had become a Chunin at 10, not nearly 9. This had worried her since she'd seen how estranged from life her son became as he was pushed by Fugaku and the clan to become the best. To live up to his place as heir and prodigy. She'd tried her best to give her sons a stable environment, and it was one reason she tried to keep Sasuke as innocent as she could. Knowing her best friend's child was so young, yet a very skilled kunoichi, made her proud, and yet concerned her. So she tried to keep Naruto as close to normal interaction for a child her age as she could. She did not subscribe to the belief that a ninja must forsake all emotion. She maintained that emotions were integral to their humanity, despite the arduous tasks they undertook for the village and their careers. At present, she was pleased with her decision to nominate them for these exams and the prospect of promotion. They had certainly earned it after nearly 3 years as Jinan. Great fight, Kasumi-chan, Naruto remarked, patting her friend on the shoulder before lowering her hand to pet Mizmaru. Thanks, Kasumi replied. I almost thought I wouldn't be able to get close enough. He was quite strong, especially since he used his wind chakra to mitigate the force of my Gatsuga and remained standing. Looks like the next fight is starting, Mikoto said, stepping behind her students and placing comforting hands on Kasumi's and Koji's shoulders, with Naruto positioned between the two older Genin. Observe their skills carefully, so you can strategize for your own potential matches in the next round. The three Genin nodded and turned their attention to the fight below, which featured Ayane of Suna against Kiku of Kumo. Interesting, the Kazekage commented, a slight smile on his face. Konoha has some formidable Genin this year. Those in the cage booth nodded in agreement. Indeed. I am quite impressed with Uzumaki Heim's team, the Wind Daimyo said. Though I am curious why the Fire Daimyo has remained silent about the Uzumaki heir. He usually speaks of Konohagakura's clan heirs with great reverence. This was a tactful way of noting the Fire Daimyo's tendency towards arrogance, as Konoha was known for its unique and powerful bloodlines and clans. The Uchiha, Hyuga, Yamanaka, Aburame, and Nara were renowned, with the latter two possessing hidden techniques that were often mistaken for bloodlines. Additionally, the near-extinct Senju clan, as well as the Uzumaki and Namikaze families, though not originally from Hai no Kuni, had also settled there. While neither the Uzumaki nor Namikaze were known for specific bloodlines, there were rumors about the Uzumaki having a latent bloodline trait. Many speculated that their vitality, healing abilities, and large chakra reserves were indicative of a bloodline, though it was merely genetic. The Namikaze were known for their strong elemental affinities, often so pronounced that they were mistaken for bloodline traits, but this was due to their rigorous training in ninjutsu. Namikaze Minato had been the last of his clan, known for his expertise in ninjutsu and fuinjutsu, much like his wife. There was speculation about whether their daughter possessed similar skills. Thus far, she had demonstrated exceptional proficiency in ninjutsu, taijutsu, and burgeoning skill in kenjutsu. Indeed, her teammates possess exceptional skills as well. One is an Inuzuka, and the other an Uchiha. Furthermore, their sensei is none other than Uchiha Mikoto, the wife of the Uchiha clan's head, Yashamaru added, contributing his perspective to the discussion. Gaara felt relieved to see his friends safe and well. He was uncertain about his feelings towards Koji and Kasumi. They were kind, much kinder than anyone else he had encountered in the village, but he was unsure how to categorize their relationship. Acquaintances? He hesitated to call them friends, given their limited interactions, only 3 or 4 conversations. The Kazekage nodded thoughtfully. I believe the Fire Daimyo refrained from mentioning the Yondaime's daughter to ensure her safety. Namikaze Minato had numerous enemies, as evidenced by her recent conflict with Kyo of Iwa. It's plausible that Sarutobi requested her parentage be classified as an SS-rank secret, possibly even concealed from the daimyo. The Wind Daimyo appeared taken aback by this revelation and the significant information withheld from a fellow daimyo. Although it wasn't strictly mandatory to report such matters to the daimyo, as they typically did not meddle in hidden village affairs, which was the reason for the existence of the Kages. I understand, he responded. I look forward to observing her and her teammates' progress. The fights concluded after nearly 30 minutes. Following Ayane and Kiku's match, there were 4 additional battles. Shin of Kumo vs Natsuki of Kiri. Tsukiko of Kumo vs Makoto of Iwa. Akira of Suna vs Hina of Suna. Nobu of Kumo vs Ichiro of Suna. Each match was engaging. Once they concluded, the proctor addressed the assembled audience with a loud voice. Now that the first round has finished, we can proceed, he began. Typically, we would continue today, but it is getting late, and a decision has been made to modify the schedule this year. There will be a 4-week interlude before the second round of the tournament. This period is intended for you to enhance your skills and rest before the conclusion of the exams. Are the rules the same? Yoko of Iwa inquired, her gaze shifting from the proctor to the remaining Genin. Her gaze seemed to linger on Team Mikoto, though it did not display any particular disdain towards one member over another. This observation led Koji, who had noticed her look, to believe that she was not as intent on revenge against the Yondaime's daughter as Kyo had been. Yes, the rules remain the same. Now, the board will display the matchups and their order for the second round, he stated, pointing to the electronic board, which now displayed 6 slots for names. The names began to roll by and soon stopped, revealing the matchups for the second round as follows. Aburame Hoshi vs Nobu of Kumo. Uzumaki Naruto vs Natsuki of Kiri. Haruka of Suna vs Tsukiko of Kumo. Inuzuka Kasumi vs Yoko of Iwa. This last matchup seemed to please Yoko, causing Team Mikoto to feel apprehensive, not only because she appeared overly excited about fighting one of them, but also because she looked familiar, despite them not having seen her until her first round match. Ayane of Suna vs Uchiha Koji. Nobu of Kumo vs Hina of Suna. Once dismissed by the proctor, Team Mikoto began to leave, though Mikoto had departed earlier to meet with the other Jonin senseis. As they exited the academy, they encountered the Kazekage, Wind Daimyo, Yashamaru, and Gaara. Naruto blushed slightly as she realized she had bumped into Gaara, causing both of them to fall. Gaara's fall was slightly cushioned by his sand. "I'm sorry, Gaara-kun, I wasn't looking where I was going again," she apologized, quickly standing and offering her hand to the slightly wide-eyed boy. Gaara was gradually becoming accustomed to the fact that his sand did not automatically stop Naruto from touching him, or in this case, knocking into him. Despite this, it still surprised him, and he winced as Shukaku laughed crazily in his head. Looking at her offered hand, he slowly raised his own to take it and allowed her to help him stand. Yashamaru had been aware of this and was not shocked, but his father was. Glancing at his father's face, Gaara saw the surprise at the fact that someone had bypassed his sand defense, a feat not even his father could often accomplish anymore. "It's all right, Naruto," he said quietly, his teddy bear clutched tightly at his side by his right hand. For some reason, his bear, which had always been a source of comfort and the only companion that did not fear or hate him, now made him feel embarrassed around Naruto. He did not understand why, as he had never cared before. "Ah, young Gaara-sama, you know Uzumaki Hime, it seems," the Wind Daimyo remarked with a smile. "Tamaki, you didn't mention that your son was friends with the Hime." Naruto blushed faintly in embarrassment, realizing that her parentage had been revealed by Kyo. She couldn't help but wonder how the Hokage would handle this situation. Sabaku Tamaki, the fourth Kazekage, blinked and shook his head. "I wasn't aware they had met before now." "Hello, Uzumaki Hime. I am Gaara's father and the fourth Kazekage." Naruto bowed politely and smiled warmly. "It's a pleasure to meet you, Kazekage-sama," she replied. "Please, just call me Naruto." "Greetings, Kazekage-sama, Daimyo-sama," Kasumi said, following her friend's example and bowing courteously. "I am Inuzuka Kasumi, and this is my ninkin, Mijmaru." Koji bowed respectfully as well and introduced himself. "I am Uchiha Koji." "It is a pleasure to meet you and your team," the daimyo said. "May I inquire about your destination?" "We were on our way to get some dengo," Kasumi answered. Naruto smiled and turned to Gaara. "Would you like to join us, Gaara? We haven't had much time to talk lately." Gaara blinked, and a small, hesitant smile slowly formed on his lips. "If it's all right," he said, glancing from Kasumi and Koji to his uncle and father. Yashamaru nodded almost immediately, while his father looked at him with a somewhat surprised expression. He supposed his father was unaccustomed to seeing him display emotions other than bloodlust, sadness, and loneliness. "Go ahead, Gaara. You can return home later today," the fourth Kazekage said, and the three adults left shortly afterward. "Come on, Gaara," Naruto said, linking her arm with his and surprising the redhead. "I'm starving." Her exclamation was followed by the growling of her stomach. Laughing lightly at their younger teammate, the group departed together. Naruto was not oblivious to the wary looks, whispers, and glares directed at her and Gaara as they walked toward the home he shared with his uncle. After enjoying some local sandengo, Kasumi and Koji decided to return to their hotel room for the day. Naruto did not question it, as she had wanted to spend more time with Gaara anyway. She noticed a fleeting expression pass through Koji's eyes before he left with Kasumi, shaking his head as if to dispel a thought. She had observed that he often gave her certain looks that seemed familiar, though she typically dismissed them. The relationship between her and Koji had always been somewhat enigmatic, for lack of a better term. However, she digressed from this line of thought. She felt an inexplicable connection to Gaara, as if there was something about him that she should recognize, lingering just at the edge of her consciousness but refusing to fully surface. "You're the Kazekage's son," she remarked, attempting to initiate a conversation and divert her friend's attention from the hurtful words and glances directed at them, primarily at him. Gaara looked at her and nodded. "Yes," he affirmed. "I don't see him much anymore." "You're the Hokage's daughter?" Naruto bit the inside of her cheek and nodded. "Yes, but that wasn't widely known until recently. My father passed away nearly 9 years ago, shortly after my birth, and I only found out about it almost 3 years ago." "I'm sorry," he said softly, almost as if uncertain whether it was the appropriate response. "And your mother?" "She passed away as well. I believe she died giving birth to me." Naruto noticed how Gaara stiffened and tilted her head in curiosity. "Oh," was all he said initially, but after a moment, he looked at her with a rare look of understanding in his typically indifferent teal eyes. "Mine died giving birth to me as well." He said this sadly, and Naruto gently wrapped her hand around his. She usually disliked physical contact, but with Gaara, she felt no such reluctance. "I'm sure she loved you," she whispered as they arrived outside his home. "So, I'll see you around. I need to train, but maybe you could help me sometimes so we can spend more time together." Gaara looked at her blankly for a moment before smiling, the widest smile she had ever seen on him. His eyes held more emotion than she had ever witnessed, and she couldn't help but grin back. He nodded, and she hesitantly withdrew her hand as he entered his home. Waving goodbye, she turned once the door closed and quickly headed back to the hotel. As she jogged back, she realized the sun was already setting. 4 weeks passed swiftly, and on August 7th, Team Mikoto returned to the arena, which had been thoroughly restored over the past month. "Welcome back," the proctor greeted them with a measured tone. "As you all know, this marks the conclusion of the exams. There will be 2 rounds. You are already aware of your opponents for the first round, the second round matchups will be determined subsequently." Surveying the participants, the proctor continued, "Will Aburame Hoshi and Nobu of Kumo please step forward for the first bout?" The 2 Junon promptly entered the arena, and the proctor initiated the battle. Thus, the final phase of the Chunin exams commenced. Thank you for watching. I hope you found this segment engaging. For more content and intriguing fanfics, please subscribe to my channel. Sincerely, Anime Octopus.